Hey there, it's Susie Hately with Functional Synergy, and with this video, I want to speak about a really important muscular structure that will help you recover from your knee or hip replacement, total or partial, in a really, really effective way. This is really important to address because stability of the pelvis is so paramount in the recovery process of hip and knee surgery. So we don't want to overstep this. And what's interesting is so many in the rehabilitation circle, they might state it, but it's not specifically stated. And people can compensate in an incredible way in an attempt to make this muscle work well. And then as a result, it doesn't work as well. There's an inefficiency in patterning. There's poor habitual patterning. The neuromuscular coordination doesn't work well. And the whole kinetic chain from your pelvis through your leg down to your foot just doesn't get to where it needs to go. And that can lead to problems down the road. So what muscle am I talking about, and how does it all work to help you have better outcomes for that knee surgery or that hip surgery? The muscle I am speaking about is the gluteus maximus, and very specifically the lower fibers of that gluteus maximus. What we know about those lower fibers is that they are inherently stabilizing. So they're supporting greater control and coordination of that leg bone motion in the pelvis. And that's really fundamental for the improvement of your ability to bear load through that leg and the other leg for that matter, as well as to step, to walk, to climb stairs, to walk downstairs, to climb up inclines like hills, to go down inclines like hills, to balance on one leg, to jump, to get down to the floor, to get back off the floor. All of those things have are impacted by our ability to have pelvic stability, and those lower fibers of the glutes are showing to play an important role in the process. Now, there's something important before I get into some movements and some exercises for you to consider, is that it's really easy to compensate. So it's one thing for me to say, all right, so now engage your lower fibers of the glutes. Because what you can do then is just take your brain to the lower part of your bum and literally kind of squeeze it. That's not what we're aiming here for. You can also kind of like try and like set it, and that can create tension in your abdomen and in your rib cage and in your breathing. It can create tension in your feet and even in your knees, and so we don't want to do that either. You really want to be able to connect with it in what I'm going to say is a global but in a very specific way. So feeling and paying attention to your whole body and to your breathing while moving that leg bone in the hip socket. So what you're going to see in this inset of video here is that I am playing with that movement of the leg bone in the hip socket. I have my hand coming in and around the lower part of my bum, and as I rotate my leg bone, I'm feeling those lower fibers of that glute muscle. Now, what we want to be conscientious about is to, again, not just squeeze the glute muscles, like just squeeze it like you're just like squeezing it. I want you to think about moving that leg bone in rotation. So if I pull up the skeleton here and I hold the skeleton like this, the motion is the leg bone rotating. So if I show it from the back side, we're rotating that leg bone. And so that the idea is not just squeezing the muscle, but really thinking about the movement that you're doing. Now, when you do it, are you hiking up the hip, or are you turning through your hip, or are you bracing with your rib cage, or you're kind of gripping with your hands? Sometimes, especially in those early stages when you're coming out of outpatient recovery from your surgery, that might not be one area that you're aware of, because you likely had compensation patterns prior to going into surgery. It was one of the reasons that was leading you into the surgery process. So this might be something that's quite kind of quiet. So really pay attention to that leg bone specifically moving in your hip socket. Here are a couple of exercises that you can do to really develop it. With this pelvis here, you can see I've got a partial leg bone. And the idea is to move this leg bone in the hip socket. So we're wanting to bring this leg bone towards the pelvis in rotation. So if I bring my hand down and around my lower butt and I bring weight over into my standing leg and I rotate this leg bone, then I'll feel, as this leg bone rotates, I'll feel the lower muscles of my butt here, my glutes, starting to engage. It's not that I'm squeezing my bum and like hiking my hip or overly willfully, forcefully like squeezing my bum like that. I'm feeling the response of my bum with the movement of my leg. So there's a relationship or a response to my intended leg movement. And that's what I'm noticing in the lower part of my fibers of my glute. So now after doing that, now stand and notice what you feel. And then come over to the other side and do the same thing. So this is an open chain movement, meaning that my foot is off the floor. In a moment, we're going to do a closed chain movement. For the closed chain movement, I've got this block that I'm going to be placing between my heels. I'm not placing it through my foot. I'm placing it between my heels. Now with my knees bent, I'm now going to press my heels into the block. And as I press the heels into the block, what I'm thinking about is rotation. Now, sometimes what can happen is we can push the heels towards each other, and that's going to be adduction, and you're likely going to feel the movement more in the inner thighs. That's not what I'm looking for here. What we're looking for is as we're pressing that, we're thinking about an external rotation, and that's where you're going to notice those lower fibers engaging. Again, we're not squeezing the butt to make the movement, but rather the lower glutes are responding to the movement of the heels pressing in to the block. Now, what's also really interesting about this is for some of you who might have an overpronation of your foot, is you might notice your arch is beginning to lift as you're doing this. And what's interesting about that is you'll see how your foot and your hip are connected. This whole kinetic chain between the pressing of the heels into the block, not in an adduction, but in a rotation idea. And that is connecting to those lower fibers of the glutes and the other rotators. Okay, now, having done that, step it away, and now stand, and now notice what it is that you are experiencing through your body. All right, now, let's take the stance a little wider. And now let's this time very specifically rotate the leg bones in the hip socket, bringing your hands to those lower fibers. As you rotate, this is your lower fiber glutes as well as your external rotators. And now from here, place your hands to the outside of your thighs, knees are slightly bent. Press those legs back into your hands. Taking your hands to the outside of your thighs, pressing the thighs back into your hands. Now, if you want to just feel those lower fibers of your glutes, you'll also feel those other rotators. Again, we're not squeezing hard. Good, and then you can start to play with dropping a little bit lower. Can you feel this as you make this a bit more complex and drop a bit lower? You want to make sure that the form and that your breathing and your overall ease remains the same. Okay, good. Then lift up and then come back into standing. Good, and now notice what it is that you feel. So the idea here is that we're helping to create a greater sense of stability and a greater sense of ease, a greater sense of integrity in infrastructure, so that your hip through your knee through your foot are functioning optimally. And then that way we can help improve the efficiency and the longevity of your replacements and really help you get back to the activities that you love to do. If this has resonated with you and you are feeling taller and lighter or more grounded or just even more at ease, and you want to take it a step further for helping you really recover from that knee and hip replacement in a collaborative way that's supportive of the work that you're doing with your healthcare team, you'll want to check out my hip and knee replacement course. You can see it in the description. As well, if you want to receive any more upcoming videos that are launching on a weekly basis, do hit subscribe and the notification button. If you've got friends who are going through replacements, I mean, more and more people are having knee and hip replacements, and you think they would benefit from this video, please pass it along. Looking forward to sharing more with you. Have fun exploring.